Yeah, so I'm Chris with Cherokee Auto, and we're featuring Susie on our podcast this week, and we're doing something a little different because Susie is not a business owner here in Knoxville. We're going to change our podcast up this year, and we're going to be interviewing businesses and still doing some marketing consulting with them, but we're also going to start interviewing some customers, and we're going to be talking about their lives, where they came from, what type of work, whatever they want to talk about. We're just going to listen to them talk and ask them questions, and this is going to be some pretty insightful information, not only for them, but for their family, and so this is going to be something that lives forever, so this is kind of cool. So thanks for being on our podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Are you nervous?
No, truly,
I'm not.
I really am not. I'm a people person,
yeah.
And I've spoken in large crowds of people, and this doesn't make me nervous at all.
And this is an honest, interaction because Susie has bought 2 vehicles from us. She's gotten a Dodge Ram and a Ford pickup truck, and so. Have you had a good experience with your vehicles?
I have had great experience. Cherokee is a fantastic auto sales. They're very people-oriented, and I think if you were to ever need a vehicle, this is the place to come because they'll work with you. My great-grandmother says, Norma, you would love Lyndon. He's been in World War II. He hadn't been home in about 5 years, but when he comes home, you would love to meet him. And Mother, of course, she just loved my dad's grandmother, And she said, I don't know. So one day my mom walks 2 miles into town to do something at the grocery store because we were big farmers. And on the way out of town, this car drives up. And my mom is walking the street to go. And all of a sudden, my dad pulls up and he gets the window down and he says, hey, he said, do you need a ride home? And my mom said, no, who are you? And he said, I'm Lyndon Riddle. And all of a sudden, my mom says, you are? Honey, she took the ride. 2 weeks later, they were married, and they were married for 38 years until he died of cancer. I never heard them ever have a bad word against each other. They loved each other dearly. Aww. Okay, you're going to make me cry, and I got to do this.
Well, you're on camera now. We've
been recording. She was a streetwalker.
For every bit of a couple.
That kind of a streetwalker.
She wasn't a street hoe. She was a streetwalker.
She walked the street to go home.
You've talked about the fact that your family grew up, lived in one little town in western Kentucky for a long time. So talk about that. Where do they live?
Okay.
Because I don't think most people know where their family comes from for such a long period of time. So.
My dad's family lived in the same little West Kentucky town since 1850, which would make 170 years old.
So what was the town?
Milburn, Kentucky.
And what is your maiden name?
My maiden name is Riddle.
So the Riddles lived in Milburn, Kentucky for 175 years.
The Rowlands lived there.
Rowlands did.
Right,
okay.
Which is my dad's other grandparents.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they came in there in 1850 from Middle Kentucky.
Right.
And, from Tennessee. And then the Riddles came from Middle Kentucky. Yeah, so our family was just everybody that was in that area of Milburn were really related. They came in there just after the town was formed.
I gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I don't think a lot of people know where their family comes from. Chuck, do you know where your family comes from for 175 years?
I have a good idea.
General idea, yeah. You said they're from Germany.
Germany and Ukraine.
Germany and Ukraine, yeah. How many generations have been here that you're aware of?
2 generations. My dad was born here and I was born.
Okay, gotcha. So prior to that, so 2 generations, they were living in Europe.
Yes.
That's interesting. So I want to I want to show you our Christmas tree. We still have our Christmas decorations up here. So this is our little office Christmas tree. It's about maybe 9-10 inches tall. And then Teresa, you're going to appreciate this. Teresa said something yesterday. The lady who we purchased Cherokee from, she said something yesterday about the podcast. And so Teresa had this made from some old dealer license plates. We've never done a podcast in the office before. So Teresa had this made and gave this to us as a gift. And so they used 5 license plates. So she actually bought this for us. And so these are old Cherokee Auto Sales license plates that we that she made for us. And so these reflect, and it makes our alarm system a little crazy at night sometimes, but we appreciate having this on the wall here. It just kind of shows that, you know, the 51 years of Cherokee Auto Sales here. This table was my grandma's table. This is an antique, this black parts table. This was my grandmother's table, and so this is one of the couple of things that I have from my grandparents, and so it's part of our business is having heritage here. So Susie, you've bought 2 trucks. Do you want to talk about your?
Yes.
You said the trucks were both good.
Very good. I still have the black Dodge Ram, and it's super. It really is nice.
How long ago did you buy it?
3 years
Yeah.
ago.
How many miles have you
Possibly.
put on it in 3 years?
I don't drive it often. Probably 100 miles.
Just put 100 miles on it in 3 years.
Yeah.
Probably 500 or 1,000, but
No, I
we had a customer come in
I
yesterday.
use it
and
to buy gas at the gas
they put
station.
70,000 miles on
bring
their car in
home.
14 months. So
I live on a farm, so
Yeah.
I don't like to carry my gas cans in
Yeah.
my car, so I put them in the back of the truck, and yeah. Oh, I may put 120 miles.
you said you told us a story about you took it to Lowe's the other day and you checked the mileage and you had put like literally no miles on it
No.
since you've had it.
But it's great.
But it's a
I
good
love
truck though.
it. It is. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's a big old manly truck. It's a Dodge Ram.
Yeah.
It's you can't really get in it without getting up on the step and pulling yourself up in it, or I can't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
remember that.
it's very special to me. And Chris sold me a great vehicle, so yeah.
So you mentioned you live on a farm. Where do you live? And
I live in the country, past the country.
yeah,
I live in West Tennessee,
Yeah,
and it's not too far from the Mississippi River, and so it's beautiful, beautiful area.
so you live on a farm, and what does that mean? You live on a farm? Do you live on thousands of acres? Do you have animals? What kind of a farm is
I
it?
live on a, we bought it as a farm. It had 1 horse on it, which was a $30,000 stallion. And so when we purchased it, we had no animals but some cats. And then I eventually purchased chickens, and we raised those for eggs and for fun. But never more than that. Oh, we had a dog at one time, but no animals. But I do have it's land that I have trails built in the back, and I ride out there on my toys. I've got a side-by-side crew cab side-by-side and a four-wheeler and a golf cart. And so when the kids come over, we run out there. But I go out there every day. It's just gorgeous. But I do keep those trails mowed.
You mentioned that you had some wild animals out there. Talk about that.
Oh, we have deer,
Yeah.
and love those. We have fox, we have raccoons, we have possums, just general West Tennessee animals.
That's a lot of deer.
But I go out to watch the deer, yeah. I shoot them, but I shoot them with a camera, not with a gun. I love it.
So we've talked about your family. We've talked about the vehicles that you bought from Cherokee Auto. Do you have any advice that you want to give everybody? Some sort of advice that's really helped you have a good life?
I mentioned earlier that Cherokee Auto Sales is people oriented. And in my life, I'm 71. So in my lifetime,
You don't look 71.
I'm,
Everybody's shocked. You don't look a day over 40.
oh, stop it. So anyway, okay, I'm 71. And in my lifetime, I have always been a people person. And that is what I like about Cherokee Auto Sales, is because they are also. And they'll treat you with the finest respect. And I had grown up in a large family, and we knew what respect for others was. That was taught to me by my parents. And then I had children and then grandchildren, and that's what I've tried to teach them, is to have respect for people.
Yeah.
So,
That's important. And you've talked about prayer and religion before. Do you want to talk about that? How, like, kind of, how did that work in your personal life? And then how did that work prior to that? Like, were your parents religious people as well? You want to talk about that?
My mother was a great saint of God, and my dad was a great person. We never knew him to attend church, but we didn't know the background that he had. As a child, God had called him to preach, and he turned him down, saying he was too young and he was too poor. And then later on in life, after the war, World War II, then God called him to preach again. He turned him down for another reason. And then later on, when he was 54, he had contracted cancer. And God called him to preach again.
That's young to have cancer.
And at 54, he was in the VA hospital 1 month before he passed, and God called him again to preach. And he gave in to him. My father went down through the rooms in the VA hospital, speaking to the men, the veterans, about their lives and trying to win them to the Lord. And some of them did, and they were all dying or very sick. And so in the end, that's what happened.
Yeah.
We knew where my dad went. My mom had been a Christian since a little girl.
Right.
And she brought us kids up to love the Lord. At the age of 9, I knelt at my mom's bedside, gave my heart to the Lord. And then about 21 years old, I really gave in and told the Lord to use me fully. And from that point until now, I have been so involved in our churches, involved with teaching, and was able to speak from the pulpit once back about a year ago. And that was a long story, and it was a great one. Yeah.
Nice. So you actually stood up in front of the church and
I did. Preached. Literally.
Wow, that's
and
cool.
A young teenager
Were you
came
nervous?
to the altar. Not really, no. A young teenager came to the altar and gave his heart to the Lord when it was over. But I did ask the Lord to give me exactly the subject to speak about, and he did.
No.
And it all went right with the music. It was beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your dad was poor. What does that mean, poor?
Because
that was a long time ago, and I know what it's like to be poor. Alyssa knows what it's like to be poor. Chuck, I'm assuming you know what it's like to be poor. You know what it's like to be poor.
Yeah.
You told me a story one time about your husband was laid off and there was going to be no Christmas. So you told me that story one time.
Okay.
But what does it mean that when your dad was poor? What does that mean?
My dad was born in 1923 in a small town in Kentucky, West Kentucky, and there was no work hardly. My grandfather was a carpenter, and as you all know, the crash at 29. My father would have been about 6 years old, and there was just no money, no work or nothing. So my grandfather did what little. Then my grandmother, eventually, she went to work, but they didn't have a lot of money. Whereas my mom's family, they were large landowners and farmers. So they were not as financially poor like my dad was. And then my dad, at a young age, went out west to work with a CCC. And so he was able to send money back to his parents. And then also when he went in World War II, he sent his checks back to his parents.
So what's the CCC mean?
It's Civilian Conservation.
So he went into the military when he became of age, and he was able to earn money that way?
He was already at the age like 15, he went out to Montana. Worked with a Civilian Conservation Corps. It was my dad.
Wow.
And then when he was about 16, 17, he went into the Army, and then he went to World War II to Germany and Austria.
He did some traveling at a very young age.
He did. He loved all that.
And how old was he when he met your mom?
He was about 22, maybe, somewhere in that area.
Nice.
Yeah. He had just gotten out of the Army, just come home from Germany. Yeah.
That's cool. So 22 years old, how old was your mom?
She's 2 years younger.
So she was 20. And they dated, you said, for
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And they were married for the rest of their lives.
They were.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You had mentioned your work that you did some work with in the church that you guys went to. And so what kind of work
Yes.
did you do in the church?
We have a small church, and so at the time I felt the need to take over on certain things. So I was a Sunday school teacher, Sunday school superintendent, junior church director, choir director. I played the piano, I played the organ, I sang specials, and I would, church camp. I did counseling with the kids, took them up there.
Tell us a story about a kid that you did counseling with one time that comes to your mind.
There was a family one time that the father was incarcerated, and the children and the wife were very affected by this. Mm-hmm. So I had asked the mother to bring this child out, the son, for me to talk to.
Yeah.
And
was he being a troublemaker?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
He's just quiet.
No, too quiet.
Yeah.
So I talked to him, and I pretty much said, we can get through this, and that one day you're going to have a bright future. And, we did a lot of talking. I asked him to keep a journal, write down all of his thoughts on the journal. Now he is married. He has 2 children, and he's serving the Lord.
That's awesome.
Greatly.
Yeah.
And then there was another young boy that he and his brother had went through a lot of problems with in their family, and I kept close to them. And then there was a situation in his life that was very major, and he was very depressed.
Yeah.
And being just a friend, junior church director, he's now today preaching at a church. Just took on a church down
leadership
in
role.
Tennessee, yes. And he's got 2 children and some stepchildren, and loving the Lord with all of his heart. And that's the whole thing of why I did the children's church, was to do what I could do to help whoever needed help,
Right.
and to love them. And that's what I did.
And I think that's important when you're dealing with an at-risk population like children, that there are people there to help them.
Definitely.
Because there's definitely
Desperately, you need to help.
Yeah, there's
yes.
definitely
Right.
there's definitely a reality out there where there are people who will prey on them.
Right.
I'm a licensed nurse, and
Right.
when I was going through nursing school, we did some clinical time at a place here in town called The Village, across the street from Peninsula here in Knoxville. And that is the last place that the kids get to go to before they're incarcerated. And so that's, just some of those, we were there for the day, and I remember 4 or 5 stories that we were told, and it was just a really sad place.
And my grandson and I have been able to be in Knoxville to work in Carm,
Yep.
feeding the homeless, and that in itself, I hope it touched them that we were able to do that. But it really touched me, and I hope my grandson, and he's very loving toward people also, and I think that does a lot.
What's your grandson's name?
My grandson's name is Brandon.
Hey, Brandon, we're going to give you a shout out. Where does Brandon live?
Brandon lives in the Big Apple, lives in New York City.
He lives in New York City.
In New York City.
Voice inflection.
Yes.
So that's good. So that was a good. That was your duties in the church. And so, what did you do for work when you first started working? The earliest job that you remember that you had?
12 years old babysitting.
You did babysitting.
15 years old cleaning houses.
Where were you living when you were 15 years old?
I was in Michigan.
Oh, cool.
Went
So
to
why'd you go
Michigan when I
Michigan?
was 2 years old,
There
and
we
my
go.
dad had to find work.
Huh? What city in Michigan?
Jackson, Michigan.
Chuck, aren't you from Detroit?
Yes.
That area?
Right outside of it.
Yeah. So Michigan. So you were 2 years old when you went to Michigan.
Yes.
And so where did you guys live when you moved to Michigan?
We lived in the city of Jackson, and we lived in a small home that had to be moved. So we lived there for a very short time.
Huh?
And then we moved into a huge mansion
Uh-huh.
on West Michigan Avenue, which was right on, it's the biggest home that was there.
Right.
At the time, it had 7 bathrooms.
Right.
It had tons of fireplaces.
But that was fun to
Huge,
heat.
Huge, yeah. My dad said we had to move because the coal was so costly. It was such a huge place.
Oh, yes.
We rented
So you
that.
heated it with coal.
We heated that place with coal, and then I was 2 years old when all of this was going on because we only lived in a little house a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And then after they moved that little house, we moved back into it for maybe 2 years, and then my dad and mom bought a home out in a place called Vandercook Lake, which is outskirts of
So when you were
Jackson,
how old,
Michigan.
they bought the house in Vandercook Lake when you were how old?
4.
Wow.
4 years old. So
Yeah.
we rented from the time we moved to Jackson, Michigan,
Yeah.
until I was 4.
Uh-huh.
Then I started school when I was 4.
So you started kindergarten or preschool.
Kindergarten
Yeah.
when I was 4.
Right.
And from there, I continued all the way through and graduated from Vandercook Lake High School.
Did you make good grades? Was it easy for you to make good grades, or did you have to really work hard at it? Were you an average student?
I was an average student. I was 4.0 in my senior year. I went through a lot of sicknesses. There were a lot of things I went through growing up.
Yeah.
Rheumatic fever. I had burned myself pretty bad one time on a gas fire. There were a lot of times I was out of school for months or
Oh,
whatever.
I gotcha.
So it was
So you
hard
still
to
made
catch
pretty good
up. I
grades.
did.
Yeah.
I did. My senior year, I was co-op president. I was 4.0 student, and
Oh wow! So
yeah.
you made really good
I graduated
grades.
from Vandercook Lake High School. But I went on to college one weekend. Went to a college one weekend, and I met my husband a few weeks after college, and so I booted out the college thought and got married instead.
Right.
So.
So when you were married, did you have any jobs that you want to talk about?
I did. When I first married, I had been working in a garment factory. I was
Right.
making one garment from beginning to end,
Right.
and there were only 2 of us that did that. So I had a
Right.
fantastic job. But then when my husband asked me to marry him, I decided to quit my job because he asked me to.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
from there, I stayed at home and took care of my 3 children that we eventually had.
Right.
And I loved it. He worked full-time at Goodyear Tire, and he had a fantastic job. And it was where I could work.
We just had our very
from
first.
home.
We just had our very first grandbaby, and she is a stay-at-home mom, and she's really
Yeah.
enjoying that.
Oh,
And we're actually going to get to see her later today with this sweet little. Her name's Ruby Taylor, and she is a little bit more than a month old. Tomorrow, she's actually going to be 5 weeks old, and so this is actually going to go up tomorrow. And so we'll say happy 5th birthday to sweet little Ruby Taylor, the baby.
I bet she's
So,
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
She
I'm gonna see
probably
her-
looks like maybe
I'm going to
your
see her here in a little bit.
grandmother, great-grandmother,
Yeah.
different ones.
She
yeah.
might, yeah, she
Yeah.
might look like the family. I know she looks a lot like her mama.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I
for
bet
sure.
she does.
Yeah, beautiful.
I bet she does.
I mean, spitting image. She looks just like her mom and her dad.
Oh,
So,
well, congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about your your job. So, what did you have any other jobs? past
There were
the,
times when Goodyear went on strike or
Yeah.
things like that I had to work.
Right.
And I worked with adult education in Jackson Public Schools,
Right.
and I loved that. We had about 12 adult students that came, and I became close friends to all of them. And I remember one memory of a girl that lived out. I would go pick her up, take her to school, and then take her back. They were night classes. And one night we talked for about an hour in the car before she went in the house. And she made a comment to me. She says, Susie, if it hadn't been for you to talk to, I would have committed
Oh,
suicide.
wow.
And so please, when you're working with people, love them.
Yeah.
Do all you can to help them. but that I don't even remember her name. So yeah, yeah.